social media is the toothpaste tube. Word of mouth is the toothpaste, right? So social media is just a way that word of mouth spreads. It's not the same thing, right? So we tend to think that social media is some sort of like magic beans, and it's not. It's just a tool in the toolbox.
Scratch Entrepreneur. True stories of remarkable people who dropped everything to turn an idea into a healthy, profitable business. When McKenzie and I started Shine Insurance, I had very little knowledge of how to run a business and even less about how to sell something. I'd been a teacher for 13 years. People brought their kids to my classroom, and if I bombed, the immediate consequences were limited. I also knew that people don't particularly like insurance and insurance agents. Maybe next to used car guys, insurance agents are the basic definition of slimy salespeople. McKenzie and I knew we were setting out to change that perception, to literally change the way people felt about insurance. But besides just being ourselves, we didn't really know how. So we did what so many new business owners do. We asked around about good resources for starting a business. Fortunately, we came across two particular resources that would define our trajectory in the future. The first was an online course by Marie Forleo called B School. This course, directed at female business owners, was chock full of good advice from brand strategies to launching a product and beyond. The second resource was a book called Utility by Baer. This book laid out a basic premise. First, you define your ideal client. Then you figure out ways to do good things for them. Things that are useful and helpful in their lives. Those things do not have to be connected with the product you sell at all. They simply have to help the people you envision offering your goods or services to someday. That book solved a conflict inside myself. I loved helping people, and as a teacher, helping kids grow was my primary purpose. I knew that leaving teaching and starting a business was the right choice, but the whole insurance thing was kind of a struggle. Was I really going to meaningfully help people? Jay gave me permission to add another layer and simply think of how I could help, period. This podcast is actually a result of Jay's book. It's an attempt to help entrepreneurs, big and small, to offer one conversation a week where you hear another business owner like yourself tell their story, and you can connect with a greater community of business owners in a meaningful way. So, it is with great honor that I present this week's guest. Baer is the founder of the internationally renowned marketing firm Convince and Convert. He's a Hall of Fame keynote speaker and the author of 6 books, including Utility, Hug Your Haters, and his most recent booming success, Talk Triggers. This is a conversation you'll want a pen and paper for. Jay lays out smart, basic concepts about word-of-mouth marketing, how to create a talk trigger, why he loves research, and what the future of social media holds. We're glad you joined us. Hey, this is Jeremy Goodrich, owner of Shine Insurance and your host for the Scratch Entrepreneur Podcast. I have the interview I've been looking forward to for, a couple
20
of years.
or 30 minutes.
Absolutely. Since I first started the insurance agency, I've been looking at Baer as an expert, as an advisor, as someone who can help any of us understand how to run our business better and how to market the things that we have to offer better. Actually, Jay, your book Utility is one of the first things I read when I started Shine. We can talk about that in a little bit, but it's a pleasure to have you here and a pleasure to be able to chat for a little bit.
And I'm psyched to be here. Thank you very much. Congratulations on all the success with the show and everything else.
Cool. I like to start with a podcast you love because it's a nice, easy place to start.
Ooh, that's a good question. Any podcast that I love?
Any podcast you love right now?
You know, we were just talking about it a moment ago. It's I really, really love Mike Rowe's new show. That's the way I heard it because it's so short, right? It's 8 or 9 minute episodes, and the tagline is like mini mysteries for the curious mind with a short attention span.
Yeah.
And I love it. It's just a really nice format. It's just him on a microphone, and his voice is so extraordinarily good. He used to be an opera singer, some people know. It's just a really nice way to knock out 8 or 9 minutes. I also love Freakonomics. I never miss an episode of that show. That's one of my favorites. I don't listen to as many kind of digital marketing podcasts as you might think. I feel like I get a lot of that hosting my own show, and so I tend to listen to shows that are a little bit broader or adjacent. Probably the show I listen to the most often, though, in terms of like actual number of listens, I would say almost every single day, I listen to High Noon, which is a podcast from ESPN. It's like 25 minutes a day, and I just really like those two hosts, Bomani Jones and Pablo Torre.
So you dig into sports, you dig into, and Mike Rowe is doing a podcast that, when it's like 10 minutes or so, it's just one person talking, and it's on some specific topic, and they have a nice voice, but they also just have a great storytelling ability. It really sucks me in too.
Yeah, it really is. It's almost like the original oral tradition, right? My mom's an English teacher, and you go back to the, before people could write things down, right? It was like, well, how does everybody know the story of Beowulf? Because people would sit around and tell that story, right? You had to be a great storyteller because that was the only way you could communicate, before people had written language in the way that we have it today. And I think there's still a lot of power to that.
That gets me to this question of storytelling, because storytelling is kind of a catchphrase in marketing right now.
Too much, though.
Storytelling has been around for the history of humans. So what are you seeing that's right with storytelling, and maybe what's wrong with storytelling in kind of modern marketing?
Yeah, I think this idea that, like I called it marketing sideways in utility, if you come at it from something other than we have something, you should give us money for that thing, that is inherently more interesting and inherently more persuasive if done correctly than just sort of the straightforward X equals Y appeal. And I think I'm starting to do some more writing about this premise too, that we're starting to understand that everybody wants to sort of make a movie, but what customers want is a documentary. Like they want to see, how does the insurance business work, right? Yeah. Not like, let me tell you why I'm good at insurance. It's like, well, how do you figure out like what's the right product? How do you figure out what's the right package? It's all the sort of behind the scenes things that you think are really mundane and boring in your business are actually fascinating to your customers and prospects because they don't do it every day.
Right.
And it's hard for business owners to understand that because they get so close to it. Can I tell you a story about that real quick?
Absolutely. Yeah.
When I was a kid, in my very first job, I just turned 18. I was after my freshman year of college, and I was an intern at a public relations firm in Phoenix, where I'm originally from, called Nelson, Ralston, Robb. And so I'd only been there like a week maybe. And we go on a factory tour to visit a new client called Rockford Fosgate.
Okay.
And Rockford Fosgate was, and actually still is, a manufacturer of car stereo speakers and amplifiers and stuff, right?
15-inch speakers when I was a kid.
That's it. Yeah. And their whole thing is like, make it loud. And we go on the factory tour and we're standing there and it's like their marketing director and my boss and my boss's boss and my boss's boss's boss. And I'm like holding all the briefcases and stuff.
Yeah.
And before we walk in, my boss's boss's boss says to the marketing director, hey, before we start this tour, just tell us, what does Rockford Fosgate do differently than other people who make speakers and amplifiers? And she had a classic marketer's, business owner's answer. She said, well, we make amplifiers in 5 sizes, and our competitors only make them in 3. I'm like, okay. Start the tour. Assembly line, amplifiers going along the line, do. At the very end is a guy, a mountain of a man. He was probably 6'5", 270, long gray beard, long gray ponytail, wearing a white lab coat. It was like a Hell's Angels Top Chef kind of combo.
Yeah.
And he's holding a giant rubber mallet, like a Thor hammer, but it's a rubber mallet. He's at the end. Amplifier comes to his station, takes it, puts it on like a sawhorse table kind of deal, takes the mallet. It's like bam, 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 starts banging on it. Then he turns it on, plugs it in, turns it on. And if the light turns green, he puts it in a box and like down the rolling conveyor belt. We're all just standing there watching this guy in the corner. And we're like, we say to the marketing director, is he always here? Or is it just like agency day, right? And she's like, oh no, that's Bob. Like totally deadpan. That's Bob.
Right.
He's our quality control process. because our customers are primarily young men and they drive their vehicles very aggressively. They hit curbs, they jump dips, they're always screwing around. And we have to make sure that the connection to their amplifier stays tight. Because if it doesn't, bad customer experience. You got to take up your carpet, go underneath your seat, whole hassle. Don't want that to happen. So Bob is the mechanism by which we ensure that.
Right.
And when we asked her what was interesting about their company, she said they have 5 sizes of amplifiers. Meanwhile, you've got like a mountain of a man with a rubber mallet. And even back then, and this is a long time ago, this is, that was 30 years ago. Wow. I might need some scotch after that. It was a long time ago. But even then, we sort of knew a good story when we had one. And so we convinced Rockford Fosgate to allow us, and I shouldn't say I had anything to do with this. I was the intern, but I was in the room to do a whole campaign, and it was here was the headline: Rockford Fosgate, if we can't whale it, we fail it. And it was a picture of the actual Bob with his actual mallet.
So good.
And then it just told his story about why they do it and how.
Yeah.
Now, if you've ever seen an ad for an amplifier or a speaker, they are all exactly the same. It is a picture of the product, and then it's bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, next column, bullet point. It's like impedance and ohms and like all this stuff, watts, and like, I don't even know what this is. And then, then we didn't have it back, but now it's like web address, phone number. And it was a huge success. Print ads, trade show booths. We sent Bob to trade shows to walk around. It was like
cardboard cutouts.
Oh my
Bob
God. Yes. All of that for sure.
Yeah.
So it was like a huge success. Right. And it's one of the things that I think you're very, very good at and most people aren't, which is understanding the innate things that are interesting in your business. And most people get so close to it that they lose the magic. Like everybody has magic in their business. You just have to let yourself find it.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, that's so fascinating. And I think that it is hard to find the magic sometimes. I mean, I'm an insurance agent. Like inherently, like the most boring.
People use it as a joke. They actually use it
absolutely.
as like at least you're not an insurance agent.
And so I went from being a school teacher to being an insurance agent. And so I was inherently trusted as a school teacher, loved, the parents, the kids in my classroom. Just we had this wonderful thing. And then I switched over and like no one trusts you and no one, it's like the complete opposite.
Yeah.
And so I was really looking for the story. And I think that what I got from utility and, that kind of helped me find the story. What I got, and maybe this is what you meant, maybe it isn't, was just tell good stories. Just do something good. Like figure out who your ideal client is. For the Rockford Fosgate thing, you knew who the ideal client was. And then figure out what you can do for them that's powerful and meaningful. So maybe an ad campaign isn't a good example, but for me, it was this podcast. Or the New Home Buyer's Guide, which helps first-time home buyers to buy a new house. It had nothing to do with insurance.
But everything to do with insurance eventually.
Yeah, and it the funnel worked and all that. And so I think I might have just gone off topic there, but I think that was what was powerful for me as I was trying to find out the value of what I could do for people in this rather boring industry that I worked in. It was, well, what do people really want? How can I really help them? I don't need to have a bunch of bullet points with impedance of a speaker.
Yeah, they don't care. They, there's a few people who care. I shouldn't say that. Who will make purchasing decisions based on that kind of granularity, but most people don't. They just want to not make a mistake. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. So you've grown up to be a prolific speaker, a prolific writer, just someone who can communicate in a way that very few people can. When you were a kid, were there any stories, anything going on that you could look back at now and be like, oh yeah, that was an example that showed I was going to grow up to be who I am now?
Oh, absolutely. I never thought I would do this for a living, but I came to it really early. When I was in high school, even as a freshman, I was like super journalism nerd and was the editor of the school paper and then was like the whatever of Arizona high school editors. Like all I wanted to do in high school was go work for the Washington Post and be an investigative journalist. Yeah. That's all I wanted to do. Like all I would do was write.
What about it? Was it the writing or was it the reresearch or was
it? Was the writing, and it's sort of the convincing, right? I mean, my mom's an English teacher, so I kind of come by that side of it naturally. Sort of being the person who says, here's what's true, right? And versus here's what's not true. I just really liked that role. And then on the speaking side, kind of the same. I was just never scared of it, and that's about 95% of the battle,
Yeah,
right? Because
totally.
most people, their greatest fears are like spiders and public speaking, right? In that order,
Walking
right?
up
right.
on that stage.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so for me, and I don't really know why, I just never had that. I mean, my dad is very gregarious. My aunt was a trainer. My mom was a teacher, as I mentioned, and so that helps too. But when I was in high school, even as like a sophomore, I think it was like 15, I was always the one who would MC everything, like every talent show, pep assembly, like mock rock kind of thing. Nobody else would want to do it. Like, oh, Jay will do it. He doesn't care, right? And so then I was named most likely to be a game show host in high school in my senior yearbook, which, all fits.
That's right up the alley.
And
Right?
I mean, like I've said this a million times, and I'll keep saying it on every podcast until it comes true. If you wish it enough, it will happen.
Yeah.
If Drew Carey ever decides, for whatever reason, I don't wish him any ill will, but if anything ever happens and he decides he doesn't want to do Prices Right, I sell my company that day. Like, I am friggin' out. Like, I'm moving to LA and doing Prices, because that's my favorite game show.
Yeah.
And I just love that show and how you interact with the contestants. And I think Drew does a great job. But that is, people say, what's your dream job? No question, easy answer, Price is Right host.
Oh my God, that's awesome. Well, I hope to see you on the Price is Right.
Man, I'm getting too old for it now, though. When Drew leaves, we're going to get a young guy, and I'm getting too old. He and I are too close in age, I think, is the problem. Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe you can sub in something. Maybe you could get set up so like he's out of town or something.
Yeah.
Jay shows up.
Yeah, that's it. The problem with those gigs is they only tape one day a week, right? And so it's like, you're sick, we'll do it Tuesday. They do 5 shows on Monday, and that's it. You don't do anything until the next Monday, which is a great gig.
Which
like,
is
imagine
awesome,
that. Yeah, you got one bad day and 6 days off. Like, put me in, coach.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, and a lot of podcasters do that.
Absolutely.
I think,
more and more people are doing it. They're batching them. Like I did, I was on John Lee Dumas' show, Entrepreneur on Fire.
That's what I was looking at.
I was on his show for this book launch. And he was like, well, I'm pretty much done recording until February, but you're friends, so we'll fit you in. I'm like, dude, until February? Like,
right, it's nice,
like,
right? Like,
what? And then he just left. He and his wife left and went to Europe for like 5 months.
So cool.
Right? Because they didn't want to not be in Puerto Rico where they live for hurricane season, because they had some real trouble last year, obviously.
Yeah. And he's worked hard to get there.
Oh my God, JLD's a great dude and deserves every bit of it and then some. But yeah, people say that. I'm like, man, I've had a podcast for 8 years. And if I'm 2 weeks ahead, I'm like, mic drop, I'm like killing it. Yeah. And I'm like, February.
Right. He had a similar thing to you where, at some point the snowball starts rolling. Like you got into doing this marketing stuff, the business is growing. And it's at some point this snowball must have really just like, wow, it's really rolling down the hill now. This is going, this is working.
Yeah.
Was there a period of time that you really saw that? You were like, wow, this is good. This is happening.
It wasn't really one moment, and partially because, this is like my 5th startup, right? So I've been doing this for 25 years. It's just, I've been in this company for 10. So it wasn't like anything that's happened was something I'd never seen before, which helps.
Convince and Convert is your new
is 10. Okay. And that's 10 years old, but I did several other companies before that. And what happened here is there wasn't really like an awakening, like, we got it figured out. It was, and I always sort of judge success this way, Jeremy, which is when you can start to manage your time almost exclusively how you want to, then you've got something figured out. Like when you start telling prospective clients, no, it's not a good fit for us.
Yeah.
When you start walking away from money, that's when you've got something rolling, right?
That's so good, because I think at first you can't do that.
Of course not. You'll take anything, man. When I started my company, the first company that I really started on my own many years ago, I'm like washing dogs and picking up dry cleaning. I was ostensibly a digital marketing consultant, but I was essentially, but I was like a virtual assistant, like to do whatever, right? Because you're like, I got to pay my rent, and then eventually you start to realize that you got to specialize just for marketing and business development purposes. And then eventually like, okay, there is such thing as a right client and a wrong client, right?
Absolutely.
And when you have the luxury of making those decisions is when you got something going.
That's so cool. I mean, we're just starting to get there where you're having conversations, and good conversations with someone who isn't going to be ideal. And then you kind of talk them through your experience, where you're at, where they can go to really find what they need at that point. And you walk away and it's like, okay, wow, I just walked away from that. And it feels really good, because, you're meeting the right client.
It's one of the reasons why I've always been, across all the businesses I've owned, a really huge proponent of understanding and knowing your competitors in a really deep and kind of meaningful operational way. And I actually believe this, that there really is no competition, right? It's just a partnership that hasn't been formed yet. And so there's plenty of fruit on the tree for everybody. And I think people who come at competition from a position of abundance will ultimately succeed. So my rule is I never tell anybody no.
Yeah.
I tell them not for us, but here's who you should hire.
And
right?
you
really, you got to have that. You got to have that database in your head, right? Or maybe an actual database.
Yeah.
Where you're like, okay, I know of all the other competitors in whatever it is that you do, there is somebody that this is the right customer for.
Yeah.
And I think it's your responsibility to know that, not to tell the customer, well, keep on hunting, get back on Google.
Right. No.
But that's how most people do it.
Can you say what you said again about
Probably
you
not.
don't have competition, you just have...
It's just a partnership that hasn't been formed yet.
That's such a great line. And because I think that's true, you know, kind of the people who you can refer folks out to. Obviously, you're going to keep your ideal clients connected with you, but you know, if someone is not an ideal client, they are an ideal client for someone. And when you establish that relationship, then you start to have a friendship with other folks who are doing similar work to you, but are hitting a different ideal client. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to dig into your books. I want to hit on 3 books too quickly and then talk about your new book that you just put out, Talk Triggers. Does that sound good?
Absolutely.
Cool. Scratch Entrepreneur is brought to you by Shine Insurance. At Shine, our goal is simple: to change the way you feel about insurance. Start that evolution today at shineinsurance.com. We're back with Jay Baer, author, speaker, owner of Convince and Convert, podcast host. You do a lot of stuff, and it's really all around digital marketing. Are there times when you just get tired of digital marketing?
Absolutely, especially because digital marketing, like all marketing, but I think in particular digital, tends to bring out the worst instincts in marketers sometimes, right? And so you sort of end up kind of doing some eye rolls and things like that on occasion. And then it's one of the reasons why my new book that I published recently is about word of mouth, which is certainly part of digital marketing, but also an important part of sort of offline marketing and customer acquisition as well. And it's been nice to talk about and now do some consulting on those things that aren't strictly on a computer.
So let's talk about Talk Triggers a little bit. Can you describe maybe the premise for the listener? So
the premise is that word of mouth is the most important thing in business for which nobody has a strategy.
Yeah.
The data show that between 50 and 91% of all purchases are influenced by word of mouth. But nobody has a word of mouth strategy. We just take it for granted. We just assume that if we run a good company, our customers will talk about us. But why do you think that? And what are they saying exactly? Same as lame. What we have to do to create conversations is do one thing different in our operations that our customers don't expect. And that one different thing becomes the story that your customers tell one another, which propels your business forward, allows you to spend less on advertising, et cetera. So the book Talk Triggers, I should say a talk trigger is a strategic operational differentiator that compels word of mouth. And the book really provides a foolproof system for doing word of mouth on purpose, whereas today everybody does word of mouth on accident.
Yeah. I think that when we think about marketing, it's this outbound idea. We're creating ads, or somehow we're talking out to people who are not our clients yet. And maybe if we take it to the next level, we're having not our clients yet come and talk to us, which is like inbound marketing. But I think that your book does a great job of saying, look, the most powerful marketer is your team, is your people.
I mean, the best way to grow any business, and this is, I will take this statement all the way. The best way to grow any business is for the customers to grow it for you.
Yeah. And the customers may love everything you do from beginning to end, with the, calling at first, walking in the front door, whatever service you're providing or product you're providing, that whole thing, obviously that has to be done well, or people aren't going to talk about it.
That's right.
But your premise is that there has to be something above and beyond that can make the conversation actually happen and can drive the conversation someone has with one of their peers about your business.
Competency doesn't create conversation.
Which is such a bummer. I mean,
super important,
ways,
right? I mean, but when we think about competency, competency is critical for retention.
Yeah.
Okay. Giving somebody a story to tell is critical for acquisition. It's not the same thing, right? So and part of this is just science, right? So physiologically, we are wired as people to discuss things that we don't expect and ignore things that we expect, right? Because all word of mouth is seeding a story for your customers to tell one another. But that story has to be worth telling. That's why you never hear anybody say, hey, let me tell you about this perfectly adequate experience I just had. Like nobody says it's not a good story. Nobody ever says, hey, and guess what? Hey, check this out. Guess what happened? So I went over there and there's a switch and I flicked that switch. Check this out. Lights went on. Lights went on. Like nobody ever tells that story because that's competency. That's like table stakes, right? Good doesn't create conversation. Different creates conversation.
Yeah. I know that feels a little frustrating to me sometimes because it's like the competency is powerful. It does mean you work very hard as a business
and not only powerful, but important.
Yeah. But no one wants to talk about that, right? And so, how do we create triggers? So what are a couple of examples of triggers that businesses have out there?
Yeah, I mean, one of the famous triggers from the book is actually not too far from where we're sitting now, the famous Holiday World and Splash and Safari theme park, right? Which gives away free sunscreen and free soft drinks, and every single one of their reviews on TripAdvisor mentions those things. That's the story that people tell about that place. There's a accounting firm, CPA firm in Indianapolis, not too far from us, called Bogdanoff and Doges, and small 3-4 man accounting firm, but their talk trigger is speed and responsiveness, which for an accounting firm is unexpected. If you look at their Google reviews, they've like hundreds of Google reviews, and everybody says, every time I email them, they email me back in 2 minutes. They pick up the phone on the first ring. Like they're like this super duper responsive, instantaneously on top of it accounting firm, which does not happen, right? So none of this has to be hard necessarily. It's just something that you build into the operations of your business. My favorite story to tell is from Skip's Kitchen, which is a restaurant in Sacramento, California. Simple premise, counter service. You walk in, you say like 2 patty melts and an onion rings and a chocolate shake. And when your food's ready, they bring it to your table. But Skip's, before you pay, launches their talk trigger. They say, well, just hold on a second. Let's play a game. They pull out a deck of cards from underneath the counter where you order, and they fan the cards out face down in front of you. And they say, pick a card. And you pick a card, and if you get a joker, your entire meal is free. Whether you've ordered for just yourself or like a whole soccer team.
Yep.
Skip's has been in business for 10 years. They have never spent a single penny on advertising, ever. There's a line to get in almost every day. They were just named the 29th best hamburger restaurant in America by USA Today newspaper. Now, there's a saying in business. It's not entirely true, but it's true enough. And it says that advertising is a tax paid by the unremarkable. And that is true enough, right?
True
it's
enough.
not entirely true.
I get it.
But it is true enough.
Yeah.
And Skip's is a great example of that because on average, about 3 people a day, I think it's 3.5 is the true average, win this kind of joker game. And when they win,
it's a big deal.
They go batshit crazy. Yeah, they're taking like patty melt selfies and calling their mom crying, and they're putting reviews on Yelp, and a high school marching band shows up. It's like a whole thing, man. Yeah. It's a thing. It's a thing. And in Sacramento, despite the fact that they have a giant neon sign out front, says Skip's Kitchen, like a big sign.
Yeah.
People call it that Joker restaurant.
Because that's the talk trigger.
That's a talk trigger. Remember. It's an operational choice.
So cool. And so someone came up with that idea and was like,
Skip,
let's do it.
Skip Wall. He's the owner.
And what a neat talk trigger. And in your book, you talk about a bunch more. What I love about this book and all of your books is that you name it something that's easy to remember. Now that I know talk trigger, I know exactly what you're talking about. And in 1 or 2 sentences, I can understand what the concept is. But then I read your book and you use example after example after example to support the concept and then provide me as your reader with actual steps to take to do the thing that you're talking about. Have you always been able to condense things down to such a, like, you have this ability to condense things down to simple, very easy to understand ideas?
Thank you. Well, two things I'll say to that. One, this book in particular is important in that way because the real key to the book is this 6-step process, which is exactly how you create a talk trigger in any business. And that part was written mostly by my co-author, Daniel Lemon, who is a genius and added so much to this project. The book wouldn't exist without Daniel. But to the other point about kind of condensing things down, people come up to me with regularity, right? After speeches or whatever, and they say, everything you say is kind of common sense, but boy, the way you say it, it really made it work for me. And totally. And they apologize, but they're like, I don't mean to offend you. And I'm like, no, you don't get it. Like, I'm totally, like, if it feels like when I say it, it's common sense, then my work is done, because there's only one thing I'm actually good at. And that's taking something complex and making it simple. I've said that before. I am a translator. That's my actual job. Right. There's a lot of different ways I do it, whatever, but that's my only, I'm not a futurist. I'm not a discoverer. I'm not an explorer. I see a trend, I map it, and then I explain it. That's all I do. That's my whole job.
You're right. And you're really good at it.
Thanks.
The book before Talk Triggers, Hug Your Haters. That's probably all we need to say. Find out who's has a problem with your business and find out how to love on them and and learn from them.
I've gotten better at book titles too. That helps as well. That helps.
It's just, I mean, because I've learned so much from that book. And again, I read the book. I got all the concepts behind it. But anytime now, I mean, I put surveys out all the time and I'm always looking for feedback. And then when somebody has some negative feedback, it's like, thank you. How can I learn from that feedback?
Raising their hand, man.
Yeah. And so cool. Okay. Anything else on the book before we take a break?
I would just say that the book's out now. It's selling like crazy, available all the ways that you can get books. There is a talk trigger for the book Talk Triggers, as you might suspect. It would be weird if there isn't. And it works like this. On the back of the book, or Kindle, audio, whatever, it says, if you bought this book and you didn't like it, go to talktriggers.com, leave the authors a note. That's me and Daniel. And they will buy you any other book of your choosing. And we will. So if whatever reason you get the book, you don't like it, let me know. If you want, like, I don't know, like a first edition Bible or something, we'll track it down. We'll figure it out. We'll make it happen somehow. So literally there is no risk. Like, you've got nothing to lose to buy this book, because if you don't like it, I'll take care of it.
Cool. All right. And we'll have links in the show notes, and I'll give you a chance at the end of the show to just kind of say where everything is. Go. Finding Talk Triggers is pretty easy. When we come back, we are going to talk social media. You have a podcast. We're going to talk about it. We're going to dig in a little bit to the landscape of social media.
All right.
Scratch Entrepreneur is brought to you by Shine Insurance Agency. Thought I would share a quick claim experience that happened recently. Got a phone call late, about 9:30 at night the other day, and some folks had a fire in their garage, and it was a mess. Went over there, checked it out. The fire department had come out. So obviously when I got there, it was all wet and terrible and sooty and smoky and awful. And we've been walking folks through that process, kind of holding their hand step by step, explaining how the process is working, and just making sure that they get their life back to normal as quickly and as well as possible. And that's what we do. And that's why we change the way people feel about insurance. There's nothing more powerful than being a part of an experience that people are going through, that our clients are going through when they are experiencing bad stuff, bad things that happen. So that's my quick story about Shine and what we do. Hopefully you won't experience a fire or anything like that. But if you do, is your insurance agent going to be there for you? Is your insurance policy and your insurance company going to take great care of you? If you're not sure about the answer to that question, give us a call, 812-679-8779. All right, we're back with Jay Baer. Jay, again, thanks so much for sitting down and chatting with us today.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so you study, analyze, participate in the social media world from the perspective of a content creator, from the perspective of a brand manager. I mean, really, almost from every perspective you possibly could, you have your hands in it in one way or another. What are some trends you're seeing in the social media landscape right now?
Well, certainly the move to video, even in platforms that were manifestly not video at some point, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, everything is becoming video or video with text. That's incredibly important to understand. The fact that in many cases now, not all, but in many cases, social media success comes with a price tag, right? That organic social, at least from a business perspective, is hard to come by, and that's not going to get any easier, right? So, it's becoming, at least in some corners, and a lot of our clients are big global corporations, and at that scale, it's in many cases more about the media than it is about the social, and that changes the rules of engagement quite a bit. It's pretty interesting.
Huh. So from a smaller business perspective, I mean, you got to pay to play. I think that's fair to say. We saw that change a few years ago at this point, specifically on Facebook.
Yeah, and it's going to happen on Instagram. They're just setting up the exact same routine. They're repeating history, right? They're getting everybody excited about free or discounted reach on Instagram, and they'll flip the switch, and the gravy train will stop.
Yeah, and having to pay. I mean, from a small business perspective, obviously, I don't want to have to pay.
No,
but what I try to do is put out good, interesting content that is, maybe a podcast episode or maybe just a silly post. Right. I do that all the time. I did the scooters in Bloomington, did a funny scooter post and then boosted it, didn't make it a full on ad or anything. Yep. And I'm happy to pay $10-$20 to get the same kind of reach that a person would get organically because Facebook is a business. I get it.
Yep.
Is that an okay approach for a smaller business? It
absolutely is, as long as you understand that reach doesn't equal customers and reach doesn't equal money, right? My favorite frame up for this question is we have to remember the goal is not to be good at social media. The goal is to be good at business because of social media. And those are not necessarily the same things.
They're not. I'm better at the first and not as good at the second.
And that's not to say that everything you post in social has to have a coupon code or whatever.
Yeah.
But reach for reach's sake is personal branding, right? It's not customer
just
acquisition.
Top of mind.
Yeah, right. And so there is some wisdom to being top of mind, obviously, but I'm seeing people say, well, let me just kind of drive eyeballs just to be doing that.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, okay. And it's only $20, but I could put that $20 into something else.
Yeah.
Right. I put that $20 into direct mail, which is killing it right now because nobody sends mail anymore.
Huh. I look at the amount of people that come to my website. It's 200 or 300 a day. It's, I look at the people who are engaging over social media, and yet I don't have a funnel behind it. Mm-hmm. So there's like all this engagement.
Yep.
And in my case, there's a lot of content, and maybe that's different than a lot of businesses. But there's no funnel, and there isn't really a process behind it. Any like small, quick pieces of advice?
Yeah, I think you want to take people, and that's your point is well founded. It's hard because people don't want to go from social to your website.
Yeah.
If they want to be on your website, they'd be on your website.
Yeah.
Right. They would have searched in Google and found it that way. And so this session interruption issue in social is really, really difficult because they're just doing the scroll, right? You're doing like the slot machine, like your eyes are glazed and it's like next post. And then you're like, I got to leave Facebook. I got to leave Instagram to go to this guy's website. Like, I don't want to do that. So what we're seeing, and we're actually experimenting with this a lot in my own content, is what if we didn't make them go? What if we just put every post on native? Just put it on Facebook, put it on Instagram. Like there's no links. Like just communicate there.
So what's an example of that? Like where's somewhere you've created content and it's there?
Yeah. So like one of the things that we're trying on right now is like if I write a blog post, which I do every week, it might be 900 to 1700 words. I'll have our content manager take and kind of rewrite it into about like 250 word summary and post that to LinkedIn as a post.
So it's right there.
It's like the summary. Yeah. And then it's like, if you want to, read more, where to find me, and not putting the links because Facebook, Instagram, to some degree, LinkedIn actually reduce your exposure if you include a link.
Interesting.
Because they don't want you to leave.
Right.
If you leave, then I can't show any more ads, right? So if you have sort of the awareness, people know how to find you, like, well, maybe we won't even have to put a link in there. So we're starting to experiment with some of that kind of stuff. Like just take the information and push it up instead of making people come to us to get it.
So the copy is right there. It's a shortened version of the copy.
It's a mini website.
But if somebody wants to come find the rest of it, they know how to find you. They don't need a link there.
That's it. They know that's the thing. And that's the one that's really kind of opened my eyes recently. Like they know how to find me.
Yeah.
Like I don't have to give them, anybody who's going to see me in those places, especially organically, they know what my website is.
Yeah, they can
it's
find
not
it.
like it's some mystery to them. So that's, I think, an interesting approach. And then the other side on the funnels is we're starting to do a lot more social media lead gen ads, right? So let's take whatever your top funnel is. In your case, it might be free blog posts. Then maybe there's the homeowner's guide, et cetera. Start to merchandise those with ads in social so that people don't have to come to your site to get in the funnel. You can put them in the funnel in social and then start to remarket to them and give them other pieces of content that are more specific that draw them into a purchase.
Okay. So on socials, in that example, still having something that's a giveaway, something to click on. You still have to click.
Well, yeah. So what we do in that case usually is you would click to get it, but you wouldn't have to go to the site, right? So it's Facebook has it, Instagram has it, Twitter, LinkedIn has it. They call them the lead gen ads, and so you just say, "I want this," and then it downloads.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then you, as the advertiser, get their email address.
Right.
And then you also know that they've done it. So now you can put them in a retargeting pool, and then you show that person and anybody else who's downloaded it an ad for your next thing, which is slightly deeper. We do it for our podcast, actually.
Sure.
So if somebody has listened to our podcast, then they will see an ad for next week's show.
Okay. Cool. Which makes total sense, right? And so when they do the lead gen thing, if they decide to get that thing on Facebook or wherever it is, it just downloads to their phone and they never leave Facebook.
That's it.
I didn't even realize that was there.
Yeah, it's pretty useful. And it solves some of that session interruption issues, right? It's like, oh, I do like that, but I don't want to read it right now.
Yeah. And I don't want to go to a landing page necessarily and like really dive down the
good for
funnel,
webinar signups and stuff like that too.
Yeah. Okay, cool. That sounds good. Facebook, what's going on with Facebook?
They are trying to figure out if they can squeeze more blood from the stone. And if you looked at their most recent financial filings, it sounds like the answer, at least in the US, is maybe no.
That they're not succeeding in squeezing. Yeah.
That they have kind of reached peak value on the ads that they can show you in newsfeed.
Yeah.
Because what they're starting to say is all of their revenue growth is going to come on Instagram, where ads are under monetized compared to the audience. And increasingly you're going to start seeing it in Messenger and WhatsApp.
Yeah.
So Facebook news feed, which I think typically when we say Facebook, that's usually what we mean. I think that is what it is fundamentally. I'm sure they'll continue to make changes to the algorithm, changes to the layout, things like that. But I think they're also sort of realizing, reading between the lines a little bit here, that the future, especially demographically, and you start thinking about millennials and they're changing a different way of looking at the world. The future is not necessarily large community-based social interactions. It's much more small group one-on-one stuff. And to put that more cleanly, the future is not Facebook. Right. The future is Facebook Messenger, right? Yeah. We're going to go back to more of that phone book style interaction more so than a broadcast style interaction. I think that's where we're headed. And it's going to be interesting.
And so like bots for Messenger.
Huge. Big fan.
Right now,
big fan done well.
They feel invasive a a little bit right now. That's because we're not used to them.
That's it. And some are invasive, and some I think can be useful. Like we have one for our podcast. If you go to our podcast page, it'll say, "Hey, do you want me to let you know when the new show's up?" And we'll just send you a little ping on Messenger.
That's great.
We have not a ton of people, but I think we've got 1,000 people on there who get alerted every Friday. It's like I'll take it.
And that's an opt-in. I think when you anytime you opt in, obviously you're saying, hey, well, this is a service I want now.
Yeah.
And if you opt into something coming in Messenger, then that's great. Works really well. But if I think a lot of people are just kind of marketing on Messenger.
Right.
And then
it's like spam email.
Yeah, it totally is. So, okay, cool. And then you mentioned LinkedIn a couple of times, and I don't pay any attention to LinkedIn. What are your thoughts there?
It's becoming a really powerful content play. Especially for B2B, which shouldn't come as a surprise. And you're starting to see some really interesting and nuanced content creation there, especially video. LinkedIn video is crushing it right now. We'll take a video that I make, we'll put it on Facebook, put it on LinkedIn, and we'll get 4x the views on LinkedIn.
Okay.
The thing about Facebook is it's tricky because on my personal page, like, yeah, I've got quote unquote fans and customers and people who know me through the context and the prism of Convince and Convert and my books and all that. But then I also got people from high school and like my mom and like, and so it's like you always have kind of this, unless you're going to start doing some demographic targeting, you always have this like kind of weird mixed hybrid audience right, on Facebook. Where LinkedIn, it's like my mom's not following me on LinkedIn. Neither are my high school friends. Like it's a more of a pure play audience, and that can be useful sometimes, I think.
Huh. So you sent out a email group, I'm on your email list.
Sorry.
A couple of, I like it. It's great. We could talk about people's email lists. They're so good. And I think you do a good job of having content in the email. So when you send an email out, it's like, hey, here's the stuff I'm interested in right now.
Yeah.
That's the basic premise. But the one I saw is, are we paying too much attention to social? Or like, are we just focusing too much on social media? And can you describe a little bit what you mean by that?
Well, I think one of the things we learned, Daniel and I were writing this book and now doing a lot of word of mouth consulting for clients is, social is hugely important, but in some ways, word of mouth was set aside by businesses in favor of social media. And people have asked me the question, well, isn't word of mouth social media? Isn't social media word of mouth? I'm like, no. Right. Social media is the toothpaste tube. Word of mouth is the toothpaste, right? So social media is just a way that word of mouth spreads. It's not the same thing, right? So we tend to think that social media is some sort of like magic beans, and it's not. It's just a tool in the toolbox. As I've said before, one of my other kind of J-isms is that social media is just an ingredient. It's not the entree. Yeah. And a lot of people, especially small businesses, treat it like the entree because it seems like the easiest type of marketing to do. And maybe it is, but I've been a social media consultant since social media was invented, and have made millions and millions of dollars telling people how to do social media well. And if I tell you that you're probably putting too much emphasis on social media, you probably are putting too much emphasis on social media.
Yeah. And I think just thinking about it as a vehicle and realizing that, word of mouth can happen on social media in the same way it can happen in a living room and the same way it can happen in an office. They're all vehicles. Yeah. But the word of mouth has to happen. And that's what you're getting at with the talk triggers.
Figure out the story first, right? Figure out what my friend Tom Webster would call the theory of the firm. Like, why do you exist?
Yeah.
Like, why are you in business? And until you got a handle on that, it's going to be hard to find your story. Until you know your story, whatever you put in social is probably not going to succeed.
Yeah. So it's like, who's my ideal client? Why do I exist? And then what's my story?
Yeah.
And then if you have all that down, then everything else
Then you
follows.
just tell the story. Yeah. Then you just tell the story, or better yet, have your customers tell the story. Like, I use this as a thought exercise with clients. It's impossible or nearly impossible in the real world, but I use it as an exercise, which is, what if I told you that we were going to take down all of the company's social media accounts? We're just going to delete them. And instead, we were going to do whatever possible we could to make sure that our clients were talking about us on their social media.
Makes total sense.
Because that's actually what you want.
Yeah. Yeah. You totally.
Because real people are not subject to the algorithmic penalties that Facebook and Twitter, et cetera, apply. Right?
Well, yeah. And you probably 10x the outcome of someone else saying something as compared to you saying something.
Not only because more people see it, because Facebook allows it to be seen, but also it's that much more persuasive. Like, if I tell you that I'm great, people are like, well, okay, but if you tell me,
right?
It just the messenger matters.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes other business owners ask me about, not that I'm some expert or something, but just like our social media experience or our marketing experience, and I think just that basic idea of, well, when you walk into a social media platform, it's like walking into a party. And if you stand on the table and beat on your chest and you say, hey, look at me, I'm so awesome, everyone in the party is going to think like, what the heck's going on with this guy?
Yep.
But if you sit down at a couch and chat with a couple of people and find out what's going on in their life and then, go from there, that works a lot better. And I think
we do a lot of work with Podium and ICUC and some other companies. And I've done a lot of webinars this year and ebooks and things like that around making sure that local businesses are getting as many reviews as possible, because that is the game, man. If I was running a local business, I would be putting so much time and effort into getting reviews from customers, because that is catnip to Google in particular. And on the local business side, you know what? I would worry about Google 3 times more than I worry about Facebook.
Besides just doing good work and having talk triggers, like, is there an app or
so we actually work with Podium, which I like a lot, and then there's a couple other apps as well that we're familiar with that actually solicit reviews from customers via text. like post delivery or post acquisition, and that's nice because when you add value with text, it really breaks through because the open rate of text is like 99%, and the open rate of email is like 20% or whatever. So it can be really, really effective if you hook it up correctly. That's a good one a lot, and more than anything else, it's just asking.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, not saying, hey, we'll give you a free sandwich because that's bogus and also against terms of service, but just be like, hey, please leave a review. I actually want to know what you think.
I think it's asking, but it is also having that vehicle for the person to easily go over to skip over.
They're not going to do work.
Yeah.
They're not going to do. They want direct URL.
Yeah, I mean, we have surveys in an email, and they click a link and they do the survey, but that just comes back to us. So it's like I want to figure out a way to have a link out that just one more step. Hey, you already wrote it. Let's just take it out.
That's it.
And that I think a lot of those service providers that you are helping with that.
Absolutely, it's really important. And Google has announced, right, that they are putting serious emphasis on not only review score, so your 1 to 5 score, but what they call review velocity, which is how many reviews you get and how often you get new reviews. Like they're using it as a ranking factor for local businesses. And the percentage of people who choose local businesses based on a Google search is like 50-something% now. I mean, it's like massive.
Super high, yeah.
Super high. So yes, obviously Facebook important, social, Instagram important, but if I was running a local business that had an actual door, like people actually show up, I would be spending a lot of time on reviews in Google.
Cool. Anything we missed on social?
No.
Awesome.
Probably. I mean, yeah.
Well, we can talk all night.
Yeah, I could do this for 500 hours, but no, we're good.
So you have a podcast that is specifically about social. Really, I listen to it all the time. Thanks. It's great. You bring a lot of wonderful people on. Social Pros podcast. And obviously the Talk Triggers book is your most recent book out. Why don't you take just 30 seconds to tell folks where they can find you if they want to.
Yeah, thanks. So Social Pros is a show about social media. We interview social media managers of companies, typically, is our guest. The show's almost 350 episodes now, 8 years. Socialpros.com is where I find that show directly. Convinceandconvert.com is our main site. So our award-winning blog and all of our podcasts and our ebooks and our videos and all the stuff that we have for business owners and for marketers. And then Talk Triggers, the new book, is out there. You can get it all the places you can get books, and talktriggers.com is the main website. And there's tons of free stuff there, like probably too much, frankly. I say that even as like the utility guy. I'm like, that's probably too much free stuff. I'm probably making it so people don't have to buy the book, but that's okay. You know what? As Chris Brogan once said, give your ideas handles and it will come back to you. So there's infographics, there are research, videos, PowerPoint presentations, like discussion guides. If you want to have a book club, like all kinds of crazy stuff there at talktriggers.com.
Huh. Well, Jay, like I said at the beginning of the show, you really have had a large effect on my business.
No, I appreciate that. Thanks.
And just thank you so much for being willing to sit down for an hour and chat. And thanks for all the work you do.
My pleasure. Let's do it again.
All right, cool. Special thanks to Jay Baer for taking the time to share his story with us. You can find him at convinceandconvert.com, and you can find his books by clicking the links in our show notes to Utility, Hug Your Haters, and Talk Triggers. There's lots more out there as well. If you enjoyed this podcast, there's a couple of things we'd love you to do right now. The first is to head over to patreon.com/scratchentrepreneur. There's a community there. There's after shows. We have all sorts of bonuses and benefits for subscribers at Patreon. So check us out over there. Then please do rate and review our show on iTunes. It's amazing how much that matters. And of course, if there's someone else who you think could benefit from the show, please do share it with them. Until the next time, have a wonderful day.